There is a type of intelligence that does not get rewarded, not by schools, not by your family, not by the rules of polite society. In fact, this intelligence is feared, shunned by the many, and secretly admired by the few. Because it is not harmless, it is not tame, it is not designed to make you a better citizen. This kind of intelligence is not about test scores or philosophical debate. It's about power. It begins with the unsettling fact that most people are terrified of knowing too much, not of ignorance. Knowledge eliminates the illusions that make life comfortable, not because it is a burden. It dispels the fallacies of justice, morality, and love. It destroys innocence. You can't unsee things after you've seen them for what they are. That is deadly intelligence's strength and curse. Examine the past. Galileo's observation of reality led to him being labeled a heretic. For challenging convention, Socrates received a death sentence. Because he wrote the truth about power, Machiavelli was banished. They weren't crazy. They had the ability to see. Behind the curtain, they could see. They expressed realities that civilized civilization could not withstand. So consider this. Why is obedience rewarded and insight punished? Why are you taught to remember rather than to ask questions in school? Why do businesses prefer loyalty to vision? And maybe the most unsettling of all is this. Is it preferable to awaken to a world where the truth makes you a threat to the herd, or to live in blissful ignorance? In today's world, intelligence is discussed as if it were a badge, something you wear to elevate yourself. You work hard in class, achieve high grades, and win over your peers. However, that isn't intelligence. That's tuxedo conformity. The actual thing, it's disorganized. It's gloomy, it's alienating. When quiet would merit appreciation, it forces you to speak. It compels you to face hard realities about yourself and other people. It starts when you recognize that you were raised to obey rather than to comprehend. You were taught to comply rather than think from an early age. When you questioned why, they responded, "Because I said so." They labeled you disrespectful when you pointed out hypocrisy. They labeled you poisonous, antisocial, and conceited when you refused to believe their reassuring lies. The most horrifying aspect, though, they weren't bad. They simply felt scared. They were worried that your knowledge might reveal the secrets that made their life meaningful. I'm worried that your clarity may reveal their misunderstanding. Fearful of escaping a society that feeds on stifling emotions and dulling brains. The universe gives you a screenplay, grins, and implores you to act. You comply. You grin. You give a nod. Until something breaks, you continue to wear the mask. A dialogue that doesn't make sense. Your eyes are opened by a betrayal. More can be spoken in quiet than in words. And you begin to notice. As you can see, being kind is frequently merely a front for manipulation. That generosity may be exchanged. That truth exists in subdued paradoxes rather than in clamorous assertions. And that the most intelligent people are the ones who observe the stage from the background rather than the ones in the spotlight. The question that makes all the difference is this. What happens if you are too moral to become corrupt yet too conscious to be controlled? The strong never want you to question that paradox. Because you leave the game once you do, you are no longer a pawn. You begin to think strategically. Similar to Machiavelli, who wrote to awaken corrupt folks rather than to appease them. Cruelty and deceit were not invented by him. He revealed them. By doing this, a deadly gift of clarity was given to a select few. But there is a price for transparency. You can't appreciate the performance once you learn to see the game. You will be the only one aware that the script is phony in a world where everyone is acting out parts. Thus, before we delve further, consider this. Are you truly interested in learning what goes on behind the scenes? Would you truly like to discover why most people are obedient, predictable, and easily tricked? Do you truly want to be that person who moves too precisely, observes too much, and says too little to ever feel at ease again? Because if so, the next section won't make you feel better. However, it will awaken you. It's to view not just people but also games when you look at your employer, your lover, your family, and your nation. Roles, rewards, signs, and then to leave them behind. To separate with accuracy, not resentment. What they taught you is not who you are. You're not a pupil, no title, not a part. You're a strategist, you're a thinker. You are a free observer in a highly controlled environment. The first weapon you can use is selective indifference. It is taught to the public that everything matters, the subject that is popular, the controversy, the insult, the compliment, the drama. He who seeks to please everyone will lose himself in the process, Machiavelli said. When it comes to their passions, the dangerously intelligent person is merciless. They don't respond. They do calculations. They don't look for attention. They watch without comment. Noise is not something they chase. They take a position of authority. The majority of individuals expend their energy responding to issues that are intended to divert them. You are already dangerous the moment you start to challenge the systems that shaped your mind, not quietly, but fiercely. But you have to do something much more uncommon to be free. Really free. Internally, you have to revolt. Not loudly, not angry, but with a clarity that pierces through all the layers of inherited mental fog. Political theater, indignation cycles, taxes, and gossip. However, the rebel is invisible, learning systems, mapping power, and honing thought, while the herd is emotional. This has nothing to do with getting cold. It's about learning to be intentional. You no longer engage in all conflicts. You save your energy while allowing others to waste theirs. You quit trying to prove yourself to individuals who aren't even aware of their own deception. You quit trying to communicate your vision to people who have never had the courage to dream of it. You are no longer subject to manipulation, and that is unacceptable to the system. Radical solitude is the second weapon you have. Dangerously bright people need to spend time alone, not because they are depressed, because loneliness is not the same as solitude. It's a mental cleanse. It's the only place free from outside noise where you can hear yourself thinking. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe, Nietzsche once remarked. You have to leave the security of crowds to be your own person and run the risk of becoming a heretic. Something horrifying occurs when you sit in silence. The mask starts to come off. You start to realize how much of who you are was created through patterns that rewarded obedience, punishment, and praise. Then you start making new wiring, though. You start to wonder, because it is too uncomfortable, what am I not seeing? Who gains from my uncertainty? What facts have I suppressed out of fear, love, or loyalty? And you gradually let go of the phony self. You cease being nice in the sense of being obedient. You cease being busy in the sense of being preoccupied. You cease to be responsible in the sense that it implies slavery. You start using fewer words, but each one is precise. You start to move less, but every movement matters. You start to see the world via what is hidden rather than what is spoken. Use the inversion of values as your third weapon. It is said that humility is a virtue. However, self-erasure results from humility devoid of self-awareness. Kindness is considered noble by the world. However, unbridled kindness turns into betrayal. Success is equated with intelligence. However, intelligence devoid of bravery turns into servitude. Values are not rejected by the rebel. They flip them. They transform obedience into partial loyalty. They transform embarrassment into criticism. They use fear as motivation. You no longer live your life according to what other people think of you. The degree to which your actions are strategically in line with your inner clarity determines how you live. You turn into a Machiavellian, but not in the harsh, cartoonish sense. In the true sense, calm, collected, and remarkably clear-headed. You have stopped playing the game. You compose your own. However, it doesn't end there. Because dangerously intelligent people don't simply run away. They construct. They construct intellectual strongholds. They educate themselves in history, psychology, rhetoric, and logic, not for ego, but for vision. They study power to prevent being crushed by it, not to exploit it. They discover the rise and fall of families and civilizations, how ideologies decay and friendships are formed. They are in control of themselves. The last weapon? Psychological autonomy. You get control over your inner state. You stay motionless while others are drawn by fear, passion, or peer pressure. You see temptation but do not follow it. You feel nothing but wisdom as you see the audience erupt in rage. When someone insults you, you identify their weakness rather than responding. You don't require approval. Applause is not necessary for you. You don't require authorization. You have roots. Your surroundings will sense it. They will perceive that you possess knowledge that they do not. They can't ignore you, but they will either respect or hate you. Because clarity is power in a noisy world. Silence is power in an emotional world. And clear thinking is rebellion in a society of deceit. Now you are starting to break free from the mental prison that imprisoned you. However, fleeing is just the first step. The last change is yet to come. For without truth, clarity is still only a partial liberation. And the true storm starts with truth. At first, you were unaware that it was taking place. How were you able to? The purpose of the trap was to provide a sense of security. You were rewarded for being amiable and putting others at ease. You stayed on the surface because you were instructed not to overthink, be difficult, or dig too deep. When you were angry, you smiled. You referred to it as maturity when your spirit cried out, no. You referred to it as professionalism. You even referred to it as love. It wasn't love, though. Programming was involved. A quiet surrender to a reality that doesn't want you to be conscious. Disowned intelligence really poses a risk of being strategically innocuous rather than foolish. You won't know enough to question the authorship of the rules, but you'll know enough to follow them. You'll be able to spot deception in advertisements, but not in interpersonal interactions. You'll be astute in arguments, yet oblivious to your own self-defeating behavior. You'll refer to this as normal. And everyone in your vicinity will attest to it, since they are acting in the same manner. The internal tension we experience when reality deviates from our beliefs is known to psychologists as cognitive dissonance. However, most people distort their vision to remain comfortable rather than adapting to the reality. Calling treachery a misunderstanding is simpler than dealing with a destructive pattern. Calling emotional neglect independence is simpler than acknowledging that you have never truly experienced love. Thus, we deceive ourselves. Worse, we refer to it as strength. However, something more profound is taking place. Clarity is lost each time a harsh reality is disregarded in the name of peace. And the basis of true intellect is clarity. Your own capacity to identify patterns starts to deteriorate. You see what you're looking for. You use emotional convenience to filter reality. Your brain is trained to cope rather than to see. And all that's left is a human being who appears to be alive but isn't. To fill a nameless void, you scroll continuously in pursuit of dopamine spikes. You strive for success in the hopes that it will allay your discomfort in quiet spaces. You mistake familiarity for fate and fall in love with people who are dysfunctional like you. You're also getting farther away from yourself at this time. This is not a failing of mine. The cause of it is taught blindness. Our civilization is allergic to truth and addicted to comfort. As a result, we develop devices that prevent us from reflecting. We create philosophies that prioritize victimization over accountability. We extol tolerance as a virtue, but in reality, it is cowardice, the refusal to face reality and what is terrible. This behavior rewires the brain in a neurological way. The brain's fear center, the amygdala, is strengthened when you deny unpleasant facts. You begin to equate danger with insight. The truth starts to seem dangerous. Being intelligent can be isolating. In a literal sense, your brain learns to stay asleep. These days, you talk yourself out of it, even when you feel that something is off in your relationships, career, or life. You refer to it as anxiety. You call it thinking too much. Routine makes it numb. By locking the doors to your own mind, you turn into your own jail warden. The cruelest part, though, is that the world depends on you continuing to be this way. Economies are fueled by your misunderstanding. Your diversion maintains system stability. Power hierarchies are maintained by your compliance. What happens if the courteous worker realizes that corporate culture is a soft tyranny? When the romantic partner no longer confuses emotional manipulation with love, what happens? The earth sways, the delusion breaks. All of a sudden, you are no longer a participant. You pose a danger. You feel conflicted because of this. You have a gut feeling that something is amiss. However, another component, programmed, subdued, and anesthetized, works to maintain normalcy. You are perched on a precipice of your own mind. The life you've been instructed to lead is behind you. Here before you is the unvarnished reality. How much does that step cost? You lose your delusions. The prize? You benefit yourself. But first, you have to choose. Do you want to live a different life in order to see clearly? Even if it means standing by yourself, do you desire to gain power? Even though you will never be able to know, do you still want to know? It's time to rebel if your response is yes. Not with catchphrases, not in protest, but with consciousness. In silence, with a precise, icy disengagement from all that is untrue. And now's when that rebellion starts. Your mind is engaged in a silent conflict. Freedom is desired by one group. Comfort is what the other want. Ironically, comfort is also winning. This isn't a coincidence. It's intentional. You were taught to value harmony over truth from the day you were born. You were awarded for your amiability rather than your intelligence. More than ignorance, you were taught to fear discomfort. Additionally, this kept you little even if it might have made you safe. It's not really your mind that you consider it to be. It is a patchwork of survival instincts, cultural upbringing, and parental expectations. Fears you never had were passed on to you. You never questioned the values you accepted. You absorbed falsely imposed boundaries by systems that profit from your consistency. The twist is that you are not a moron. All you've been taught is to deny your intelligence. You've been trained to question your intuition, to stop you from making observations, to suppress your opinions in an effort to blend in. And you nourish the part of you that wants to remain blind each time you did that. Each time you compromised what you knew to be true in the name of peace. The unconscious aspects of yourself that you suppress in order to preserve social acceptance are known as the shadow, according to Carl Jung. Your shadow gets bigger every time you see dishonesty in someone's grin and remain silent about it, or every time you swallow the truth to maintain a lie. And one day it starts using the dark to manipulate you. Nietzsche also cautioned against it, saying, "He who fights monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster." However, he emphasized that fighting monsters is not the true risk. Never seeing them in the first place is the problem. Additionally, you become a puppet to forces you cannot identify if you never face the monster inside of you, the part of you that exchanges truth for approval. So what's going on? Because consensus, not truth, is the foundation of society. And stability is necessary for consensus. The truth causes instability. It raises questions about things that shouldn't be asked. People's masks get burned by it. It calls into question the narratives they rely on to stay alive. And that's what makes it risky. Machiavelli was more aware of this than most others. He exposed manipulation in the prince rather than glorifying it. He was aware that leaders frequently have to decide between being feared and being adored. And he was aware that most people will conceal their ambition beneath morality if they are given authority. They will further their own goal while feigning to serve justice. And anyone who exposes them will suffer the consequences. The system then retaliates. It shapes minds through teaching rather than arousing them. Standardized testing takes the place of critical thought. It rewards originality with mistrust and compliance with praise. It persuades you that information is only valuable if it results in a job or a grade. However, the truth is that when knowledge leads to freedom, it can be hazardous. Furthermore, true freedom is frightening. It entails thinking by yourself. It entails bearing hardships that others won't accept. It entails navigating a society full of individuals who confuse loudness for wisdom and civility for morality. It entails being the oddball, the one who doesn't fit in, and the outsider. Nevertheless, this is precisely the route that leads to power, not the ability to manipulate others, but the ability to govern oneself, to be able to tell when someone else is blind, to think freely in the face of dogmatic enslavement, to take intentional action when others are being dragged by their emotions. However, the price is high, because there's no turning back once you're awake. Thus, ask yourself, are your beliefs inherited, or are they genuinely your own? Did your thoughts come to you, or did they come to you? And who would you be if you dispelled all the lies society has fed you? Because you can only be prepared to fill it with something genuine when you confront that dreadful emptiness, the hole beneath borrowed identity, something hazardous. You know, something. There is yet another deeper layer, though, because simply being aware of the issue is insufficient. You have to recognize how it has influenced every aspect of your life, including your decisions, aspirations, and anxieties. You must follow the unspoken thread that connects all of your interactions in order to accomplish that. We will reveal that next. Freedom was never intended for you. The most potent insight is that. Not because it's pessimistic, but because everything makes sense once you see it. The guidelines, the tales, the terror, social customs that assist control while ostensibly maintaining order. You were not developed by the systems you were born into. They were designed to keep you in check. You didn't get smarter at school. It made you less interested. Innovation isn't rewarded at work. Predictability is rewarded. Your entertainment, culture, and relationships are not arbitrary. They are loops. Loops that capture your interest. Loops that reinforce your fears. Loops that cause you to forget that your innate capacity for clear vision and free will is a more dangerous weapon than any government would like you to possess. This was Machiavelli's last cautionary tale. The indifference of mankind, not the brutality of monarchs. The fact that most people do not want freedom is a frightening reality. They desire the appearance of it. Because freedom necessitates accountability. It requires self-control. It requires you to stop blaming your trauma, your parents, your boss, or your God. There is no one left to beg when you are fully free. There was nobody left to impress. Nobody remained to follow orders. You and the mirror are the only things there, and the majority of people can't stand to look. Because you see the years you wasted when the mask comes off, the lost chances, the facts disregarded. You killed yourself to fit in, to be safe, to be normal. Then, in the quiet, it strikes you like a bullet. You've been indoctrinated to dread your own strength. Not only your cognitive or analytical skills, however, you have the ability to create, to establish your identity, to develop your values, to build your future. This is what freedom really means. Not getting out of the system, but being uncontrollable by the system. If you look more closely, you'll notice this motif everywhere. In the name of peace, the loudest voices advocate submission. Convenience is marketed by the wealthiest elites as progress. In the guise of romanticism, the most shattered couples promote codependency. Dependency masquerades as safety everywhere. However, if you're awake in a casket, safety is a coffin. You were destined to construct something. Not an empire, necessarily. Not necessarily affluent. But a life that is true to you and not what they have programmed you to be. This is the final insight that turns you into a true danger. To be understood is not why you are here. To become real is why you are here. Realness is also uncommon. Realness emits radiation. It reveals others' deceit. It makes you uneasy. It becomes unstable. Others find it unsettling not because you are antagonistic, but rather because your clarity makes their misunderstandings clear. You'll sense it. Conversations change as soon as you walk into a room. People start becoming wary, as though they realize they can't deceive you. They sense it. Your awareness is a blade, but they don't know why. You break through the cacophony. Behind the smile, you can detect the anxiety, the vulnerability of the rage. You react differently than other people. You don't fall, chase, or plead. You pay attention. You gain knowledge. You do the math. Because of this, you are unforgivable and unforgettable. However, the cost of total freedom is as follows. Before you are respected, you will be feared. Before you are trusted, you will be questioned. Before you are followed, you will be by yourself. However, the few who are prepared to wake up will be those who actually follow you, to rise with you, not to worship you. That's how revolutions start, with ideas, not with noise. Not with catchphrases, but with consciousness. With vision, not with violence. You have now completed the entire path. You have raised doubts about the script. The mask has been seen by you. You are no longer part of the herd. You are now in charge of creating your own perception. And now, even if you never speak, you're prepared to take the lead. Now what? You are now living in accordance with the invisible code that directs all genuinely liberated minds. You see more than you talk about. You ask more questions than you acknowledge. You suffer isolation to preserve your lucidity. To preserve your truth, you put up with miscommunication. You move intentionally rather than noisily. The trip does not end here. The first real step is this. Because you are now more than merely familiar with the system. You do more than simply condemn it. You don't simply get over it. You can see it. You are an expert at it. You outgrow it. And when someone younger than you approaches you one day, bewildered, terrified, or just starting to wake up, you will look them in the eye and say, "You're not crazy. You're not broken. You're just starting to see." And you won't just be smart at that point. You will pose a threat. You'll be at liberty.